Today's video may not be your cup of tea, but bear with me and I think you'll appreciate it. So welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining me here on Horticulture Geek. I'm Ray. In today's video, we are going to an unexpected garden. This is a place that my wife and I had the opportunity to visit while we were vacationing in Atlanta last week. This is a historic garden, and it's a place that a lot of people in today's day and age don't really like going. So what is it? What am I talking about? Well, we actually went and visited the historic Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta, Georgia. I know, crazy, right? Some of you are like, Ray, what are you talking about? Well, here's the deal, guys. For you young people out there, you probably have no idea what's going on because modern cemeteries today are nothing like historic cemeteries of years gone by. And when you go and visit a historic cemetery, and this cemetery actually is a Victorian era cemetery, absolutely gorgeous. So here's what it is, guys. Back in the old days, the 1800s, there was no concept of perpetual care at a cemetery. So when you bought a plot in a cemetery, you actually bought the land where you were to be buried. You got a property deed, and that was your land. And your family would inherit that land upon your death that you would be buried in. And so then they were now the property owners of that land where you were buried. And families would buy large groupings of plots. They would all be buried next to one another. And that's why, it's because they owned that land. And therefore, it was the family's responsibility, or the property deed holder's responsibility, to take care of that land, keep it mowed, make it look nice. But this wasn't a challenge back in the day, because this was at a time when it was expected that you would go and visit the dead on a regular basis. Most families would go monthly to the cemeteries to visit the loved ones that had gone on. They would have picnics on the grounds. They would have singing. They would get together like a family reunion. And what spurred out of that movement was, if we're going to spend time here, then we want it to look nice. So that's where the concept of planting flowers on graves has come from. And so it became a competition as to whose family could have the nicest garden on top of their loved ones. And so plots were divided up, little walls were built, decorative fencing was put up, beautiful mausoleums were put up, beautiful planters were added in, and it was truly a competition to see who could have the best landscaping, the best garden for their loved one. Because the better the garden was, the more loved the people were, and the more prominent that family would be. And so it really was a challenge to see who could do this. And so historic cemeteries like Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta is really where the concept of the modern city park began. So parks and gardens that we enjoy today, the concept for those was born out of historic cemeteries like this one. And these cemeteries are in all major cities they're around. So if you live in a city that predates 1900, you probably have a cemetery like this in your area. But what makes Oakland interesting and what makes it neat is that a group of people saw that this cemetery was starting to deteriorate and dilapidate. Nobody was taking care of it anymore. So they stepped in, worked with the city of Atlanta. So the city of Atlanta now manages the cemetery as a city park. They actually have a sexton on staff that runs the cemetery day to day for the city. And then the Cemetery Foundation was formed, which works to maintain and improve the gardens. They offer tours. It's really a fantastic thing. So the video that I'm going to show you today is just snippets of some of the fun things that we noticed when we were walking around the cemetery. And so what you'll notice here, though, is if you've never been to a historic cemetery, these things take a lot of work to maintain, which is why modern cemeteries, you get a flat stone, and for an extra bit of money, you can have a vase that pops up that you can put some flowers in. Well, that's where that concept comes from, because people still wanted to put flowers and adornments on the graves, but with the concept of perpetual care and with the families no longer taking care of these cemeteries, it became a lawn. So flat headstones, easy to get lawnmowers right over, and the days of visiting and hanging out and enjoying the garden or the cemetery were gone with perpetual care. So here are some stats about Oakland. So the original cemetery started out with 6 acres, and that was purchased in 1850. And it is less than 1 mile from downtown Atlanta. As the city grew, they did have some small cemeteries directly connected to some of the churches in town, and then there was a small city cemetery in the city. But as Atlanta grew, if you've ever been there, you know it is huge. Land became premium, and they could no longer afford to devote cemetery or graveyard space within the city proper. So in 1850, the city bought 6 acres out 1 mile away from town, and that's where Oakland was formed. It was born there. Since that time, it is now 48 acres in total. And here is an interesting fact. The cemetery is actually not full. There are actually open graves in Oakland Cemetery, but there are no graves for sale because all of the graves have been purchased. So if your family is historically from Atlanta, you may want to check into that to see if you own a piece of Oakland Cemetery. The trustees do try to track down descendants of property owners there as best as they can, but it's a hard task. And so currently, I think they said they have still today about 10 burials a year with people who either come across the property deeds and use them, or families have indeed passed them down and something happens, they need a space, or people come across these property deeds, realize what they have, and sell them back out privately. So you cannot contact Oakland Cemetery and buy a plot, but you can be put on a waiting list, which is then given to people who come across property deeds. So it's very interesting, fascinating place. So without further ado, because I'm rambling, let me roll some footage and let you see historic Oakland Cemetery. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that footage, getting a glimpse into the historic Oakland Cemetery. Like I said, this is really where the modern park system for our country comes from. Cemeteries were indeed the first public parks because as families gathered there, they planted their gardens. People liked the idea of having a green, beautiful space to go to. And cities and companies quickly realized this and started developing city parks. And then the whole park movement in America began. So these are really neat places to visit from a horticultural standpoint. You can really see some beautiful things, some old mature plantings, some beautiful old garden fencing and bird baths and statuary and things that you can still to this day draw inspiration from for your own gardens. So like I've said, if you have anywhere near you like this and you're not opposed to visiting a cemetery, go check it out. See what your local historic park has to offer. But I think that wraps it up for this video. If you've enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. I would certainly appreciate it. And if you have for some reason already not subscribed to our channel, hey, hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you on the journey with us because you never know where we're going to go and what we're going to get up to. So join us on our journey and see what we have to offer. But until next time, from my garden to yours, I wish you all the best and happy gardening.